I want to kind of recap just a little bit, and I want to go back. A lot of people don't know who Westcott and Hort are. And when I first got saved, I'd read about these two just demons named Westcott and Hort. I didn't know what they did, what they were. All I know is they were like these like the worst humans in the world. Tell us who they were, what they were trying to accomplish, and the impact that they've had on modern translations.
Well, they were both Church of England theologians. Hort lived from 1828 to 1892, Wescott from 1825 to 1901. They both attended Trinity Seminary at Cambridge University in England, which is where they met. They were able to exert, through the course of their life, an awful lot of influence. They are responsible for what for a long time was known as the Westcott and Hort theory, that the older text had to be the better, and that the newer it got, the worse it had to be.
Hmm.
And they had access to a couple of texts that they thought were really old. That is questioned today, I think, very reliably. But even if you granted that, they said, well, it's older, so it's got to be the most accurate.
Hmm.
And it's dramatically different than the vast majority of texts that go to the background of our King James Bible. And so in the 1800s, they produced a Greek New Testament that they said was based on the older texts. I have an old copy of it here, right as we're talking, and it's fallen apart, but it's the New Testament in Greek from Westcott and Hort, and it has their introduction explaining all the older is better, and how terrible the majority text was and how fallacious it was. And they began to advocate. They had their Greek text. They began to advocate for a New English Bible and New English translation, and they were able to influence the Church of England to the point that one was authorized, though it never got accepted. It got published, but never got accepted. But their ideas, in fact, it went out of print quickly, but their ideas caught on, even though their texts didn't,
Hmm.
or their New Testament English text didn't. Their ideas caught on. Their ideas get quoted everywhere by folks who are opposed to the King James Bible. And they had a number of key ideas. And again, I have read the biographies from their sons.
Hmm.
I deserve an honorary doctorate for reading them. Spencer Smith University. You need to give me a doctorate just because I was willing to read hundreds of pages of primarily trivial nonsense. But there's a couple things that come across. Number one, they did not believe in the verbal inspiration of Scripture. They did not believe God gave the words. They did not believe in the deity of Christ. And I have right in front of me a quote from Wescott's commentary on the book of John, in which he said, Thomas answered, saying, my Lord and my God, and the words which follow show the Lord accepted the declaration of his divinity as the true expression of faith, but he never speaks of himself directly as God. But the aim of his revelation was to lead men to see God through him. That's not a very
Mm.
trustworthy explanation of the deity of Christ.
No.
They attitude towards the atonement was dramatically different than a biblical explanation of it. But they were just very, very adamant that men needed to be helped by having a more accurate text of Scripture, and they could produce this more accurate text. And that what used to be known as the Westcott and Hort theory.
Hmm.
Some years ago at Graceway Bible Society in Canada, they said, we want you to come speak for us. And I said, I'd be glad to do that. They said, we'd like to give you the title of your message. I said, well, that's interesting. Let me hear the title. And they said, the Westcott and Hort only controversy.
Hmm.
They said, we get constantly accused of having started the King James only controversy.
Hmm.
So that's not really the issue. The issue is the Westcott and Hort only controversy. So I was intrigued. I spoke on it. It's a chapter in my book today. And lots of folks try and shy away from them today. They say, we're not following Westcott and Hort. We're following Nestle and Land. But Nestle and Land came from Westcott and Hort. Said we're following Eugene Nida, but Eugene Nida is teaching the Westcott and Hort theory. influenced everything he did. So the anti-King James movement is really a Westcott and Hort only movement. There is no anti-King James movement that is not dependent upon them. The Roman Catholics now quote them. The Jehovah's Witnesses claim Wescott and Hort, an introduction to New World Translation, claim Wescott and Hort is the authority for the translation they produced.
Wow.
They are the men. And among there are a number of interesting things about their theology. They represented the Church of England at the time. I have been pretty well known and frequently attacked by trying to point out they're practitioners of the occult. But again, the quotes that people say don't exist, I've got them sitting in front of me while I'm doing this broadcast.
Sure.
And they helped start a club when they were in college together called the Ghostly Guild. That was purpose of it was to study reports of ghosts and spirits. And because they said a lot of them were foolish, but they would go on and describe it saying that the being all disposed to believe in such things really exist, and the things that really exist, ghost stories really exist, ought to be distinguished from the hoaxes. And they started that organization, which still exists today in England, is maybe the largest occult organization in England today. And they're defenders. Staff at Bob Jones are really big on this, said, wait, you can't blame people for something silly they did when they were college students. Well, I grant you, I've been involved teaching in Bible colleges for 49 years. You get used to college students doing some silly things.
Yeah.
I did some silly things as a college student. I never started a major occult organization by accident. Okay, nothing I did fell in that category. And later, they started a second occult organization, and then later a third one. So even if you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they were college students for the first one, you got two more you have to explain. And they believed in something called the communion of the saints. And they talked about the communion of the saints, especially Wescott. Hort did as well, but Wescott even more so. Communion of the saints is a belief that when the people die, their spirits do not go directly to eternity, that they continue on the earth for a period of time, often dealing with unfinished things while here on the earth. And there's a whole group, and I ran into this group by accident. I pastored in Chicago, and right across the street from us, there was an apartment building, and no sign on it, and 2 blocks down, there was a church called the Community Christian Church. And so I saw somebody coming out of the Community Christian Church. I stopped to introduce myself, pastor of the Baptist church, a couple blocks down. Guy said, "Oh, yeah, I know." He said, "Our international seminary is right across the street from you." I said, "Well, sir, I believe it's an apartment building." He said, "No, that's our international seminary." He said, "We bring in people from all over the world." And said, we teach the communion of the saints. It's the very term Westcott and Hort used. And I looked them up, and sure enough, that was their seminary. And the purpose of their seminary was to teach you how to minister to the spirits of the unborn, the living, and the spirits of the recently dead. And according to the pastor of the church, whenever they would have a service and the people would gather there, spirits would come and join with them and participate in the services with them. And I'll never forget, again, we're right across the street from their seminary, young people coming from other countries. And we're having a revival meeting, and a couple of my young men come in, and there's a couple of young women. They're out at a picnic table in front of that apartment building. The young men don't know it's a seminary or what it is. They were attractive young women, around 20 or so. And the guy said to me, he said, "Pastor, would there be anything wrong if we went over and invited them to a revival meeting?" I said, "Your deep burden for the souls of attractive young women is very impressive." And I said, "No, you go right ahead and go over and invite them. Tell them the pastor said they're welcome." So they go over and talk to them for a few minutes, and they come back so dumbfounded they can't even talk, over what their girls have said to them. But Wescott Wescott's daughter told the same story. This pastor told about communion saints. And again, I have the quote right in front of me. And so when he was pastoring at night, he would go into the auditorium of the church, and then he spent the evening in the auditorium of the church being joined by the spirits of the dead who would come and commune with him for hours. And the 400 seat, according to him, the 400 seat auditorium was often full of he and the spirits. And then as you got closer to daylight, the spirits would begin to leave one by one until he was there alone. That was the communion of the saints. That's Wescott. It's during the same time that he and Hort are producing their Greek New Testament.
Oh my.
Yeah, and so when a guy tells you a story like that, there are three possibilities. He's insane, in which case I don't trust him to do Bible translation. Or he's lying because he has a scam going on, in which case I don't trust him to do a Bible translation. Or even worse than insanity and scamming, he's actually talking to spirits all night, which would have to be biblically demon spirits. And I really don't trust him to translate the Bible for me. And so, I mean, that's it. So, yeah, their theology, they were what we would call today modernists. They were high church in the Church of England. The low church was considered to be Bible believers. They were high church, but so they denied verbal inspiration. I take it a step farther. This is serious. If they practice the communion of the saints, if they're dealing with spirits, which their record and their statements and the statements of their sons indicate that they were. And that, by the way, was a door opener for me. I would mention that, and that's it in the book. But I did not go farther until I began to find out more and more how common this story is in a Bible translation. J.B. Phillips, who did the Phillips New Testament, records that he'd written a letter to C.S. Phillips. He wrote a book called Ring of Truth about the translation effort. He wrote a letter to C.S. Lewis, who was a prominent literary figure and linguist, asking his opinion on something about a point of translation, and Lewis died before he could answer the letter. So according to J.B. Phillips, he's in his study one night, roaring fire. He's working on the translation. And he says directly the ghost of C.S. Lewis came to him, because ghost of C.S. Lewis apparently felt guilty about not answering the letter.
Oh my.
So he answers Phillips' question, and Phillips calls it the communion of the saints, just like Wescott did. And I'm saying, okay, guy tells you a story like that, there are three possibilities. He's insane, in which case I don't trust his New Testament. Or he's a scammer, in which case I don't trust his New Testament. Or he actually believes the ghost of C.S. Lewis, and a spirit claiming to be the ghost of C.S. Lewis showed up and advised him on Bible translation.
Oh my.
You get the point.
Yeah.
Boy, this goes on and on. I spoke this. I mentioned Severin. I mentioned Westcott and Hort. I mentioned Phillips. And people started sending me things when they'd hear the sermon. Joseph Smith did his own translation of the Bible, helped by spirits. It says in the introduction. And Joseph Smith admits there are things in his Bible translation that are not in any Greek or Hebrew text anywhere. But spirits gave them to him.
Wow.
And so that makes a Bible. And I mean, this goes on and on. And I mentioned in a sermon, I came across a story of a fellow named Greber in Germany who did a German translation of the Bible. He got expelled from the Catholic Church for claiming that spirits helped him with this translation. And the spirits told him, the blood of Christ doesn't save anybody. And the spirits told him there's no heaven and no hell. And the spirits told him, above all things, do not use the majority text. And so I told that, added that to the message. And somebody got home and said, you don't know the rest of the Greber story, do you? I said, apparently not. He moved to the United States in the 1930s. And he did the spiritualist translation of the Bible into English. And in the beginning, in the introduction, he explains to you that spirits helped him get this done, both in German and in English. And it's still published by the Spiritualist Church. I bought my copy from the First Spiritualist Church. I forget now what city in Michigan, Flint, Michigan. And I called them and I said, do you really have this? And you publish it? And they said, yes. And I purchased one from them. I also have Joseph Smith's translation in his introduction, saying I had put all this in a sermon. Somebody got home and said, you don't know the rest of the Greber story, do you? So apparently not. The Jehovah's Witnesses, when they did their translation, had as the English Bible of reference the Greber translation of the Bible in front of them.
Oh, wow.
It's where they got John 1:1, about the word being a God, and not God, but a God. They got it from Greber. And also in Greber, you go to 1 John 4, where it says, beloved, to try the spirits. In the Greber Bible, it says, beloved, trust the spirits.
Oh.
Yeah. And I've been collecting these. I key and just like every time I speak in it, somebody gets on it. But did you know about this one? And did you know about this one? And it's just amazing. I still keep collecting them. I don't know if I'm done yet. Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, who produced Theosophy, 7 levels of spiritual growth, in which spirits help you with each of the 7 levels. And she wrote about all this, and it became the cult Theosophy. And level 7, top level, advanced level. One of the things that spirits teach you is never, ever trust the majority text, scripture. And I mean, this is, Westcott and Hort, they can absolutely be refuted based on their modernist theology. And that, again, is obvious as you go through this. But it's more than that. It's more serious than that. It's worse than that. And people will keep telling me that doesn't exist, but it does.